Hi, welcome to East Creek. I'm East Creek Joe. Today we're going to make a two-part 50-pound pot. We're starting off here with some already wedged clay. Check out the other wedging video if you want to see how we got here. This is set up so that the bottom has a bit of a convex side. And when I put this on here, I'm going to start close to where I want to end up. And I'm going to place this as close to the center as I can. And I'm throwing directly on the metal wheel head because I don't want the bat messing with me in various ways. I do need a bat for my other piece, which is going to be thrown on a separate wheel. If you only have one wheel, then you do have to deal with the indignity of bats, but it's not that bad. So I have my clay centered, and I'm going to do this little bit of clapping. And you'll see, as I start to turn this and clap it, I can go a long ways towards getting this centered. So then when I start putting forth, and you can hear I'm not using any effort at all, really. When I start putting forth effort, this will already be pretty close to centered. So now you can see, it's not perfect, but it's pretty close to where I want to end up. So as I'm getting started here, I've got my piece of clay is set up and ready to go. Sometimes if you're struggling with how much water you're using, you can kind of like use your claws to do a little bit of a kind of a scrape, a surface scrape and pre-center. And this can be kind of, you can see I'm not really doing much, but except for wiping the clay around on the surface. And this just makes the whole thing a little bit smoother and maybe a little bit easier to avoid starting to get resonance on something crazy. But just like the process of throwing on the East Creek platform, we're gonna check our body and be ready for a cone up. I'm gonna use my hand meat, and I'm gonna start at the bottom, always move it up. Move it a little faster. Thinking about the wheel speed, centering, opening, raising, shaping. We're gonna be going 50%, 40%, 30%, 20% of the total speed of the wheel. And then once we put the second piece on here and we start doing the two-part stuff, we will probably never go above about 15% of the speed of the wheel. So the electric wheels generally have way more power than you need in terms of speed, and what you're really looking for is that low end torque. So I'll give this a couple of cones. And if you're wondering about the coning process, go ahead and check out the throwing demo video where we talk a lot more about the coning up process and the coning down process. But I'm using my hand meat to get about this level of thing. And then I'm going to be bending the cone. So I'm going to take this whole thing, I'm going to push forward, and that's going to allow the wheel to pull that down. But then it's not going to finish itself. I'm just going to split my hands and come down over the thing. You'll see the bottom is still a little bit funky down there, but that's all right, because now I can go over that again. And fix that. And now you'll see there's on this very bottom edge, there's a little bit of extra craziness, and I can just use my finger to waste that craziness off into this outer space. Then I don't have to worry about, it takes a lot of effort to get that little bit centered down there. So why expend the effort when you can just take it off? As you think about these pots, and remember, all pots take waste clay to make. And as a percentage of the bag of clay, this is not very much more waste than we're used to in the process. Okay, so I have a fairly centered ball of clay. And one thing I hope is that I was kind of yakking through the whole thing. You didn't hear me straining very much. You only have those 6 full power activations from your body in any given day. So you want to make sure that you're doing things to minimize your effort if you want to be able to make work all day and keep practicing and practicing. So centering, opening, raising, shaping. I'm done with my centering. I'm going to use my thumbs to create a divot for the opening. Then I'm gonna add water to the divot. And now I'm driving with my middle finger in my left hand. I'm layering my middle finger and my right hand over that and my hands together. I'm gonna drive down as deep as I can until I start putting forth too much effort. Whew. Okay, but as I did that, you probably noticed that this line kept moving out. It always has to keep moving out slowly, this top line, and that's the secret. So if you're drilling down and the rim isn't getting wider, then it's probably hard to prevent the thing from starting to go a little crazy. Now that I've gotten into that place where I can't go any further with my two-handed push, I'm gonna get into the same position that I would get when I'm raising, and you'll see this again, right elbow to right knee, and then I'm in a place where I can do a curl and a bent over row. And so this is gonna be actually this bent over row motion, and notice that I have my knuckle pointed down, my knuckles are stacked, my wrist is stacked over my knuckles, so I have a full straight line coming down through here. So I have this really powerful drive down into the clay, and this is about the most powerful opening move you can make, where you are driving down. So I'm also gonna, though, I'm grabbing my wrist to stabilize this hand so that it prevents me from going like this. So just a little bit of stabilization here will add a lot of strength this way. The other thing that you can sometimes do with that stabilizing hand that's helpful is keep a sponge in it so that you can deploy some water if it feels like you're starting to run out. And since I've been talking, some of my water's kind of gone away. So I'll finish this opening till I think I'm about an inch from the bottom. Then I'll go in there and have a look, and I'll test with my needle tool, which is getting like ridiculously dirty from several days of demos. We're in a 5-day throwing large masterclass here as we sit in summer 2025. Okay, so from that, I think I'm an inch. Oh, that's pretty good. I'm like maybe an inch and a quarter, inch and a half. But that's good confirmation because I want this bottom. I need clay here. You know, I cannot have a bottom that's a potato chip. I need at least 3/8 of an inch, if not a half. My target in my mind is a half because it's really easy to just thin it out a little bit more. A lot harder to thicken. So I'll do that same thing. I'm not really making very much downward pressure move, but I have the same hand position where I have my knuckle that's doing the work and I have my other hand that's stabilizing. Now I'm gonna just double check my thickness. Boom, I like it. That's about a half an inch and I'm gonna keep that. Now I wanna make the opening at the bottom, the floor, I want a flat floor to avoid S-cracks, and I'm only gonna open it about 5 fingers wide. So just wide enough to get my whole hand in there kind of wide and flat. That's all I need. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to not get your pot open too wide at the bottom at first. It will go wider. It will do its thing. You know, that's the whole point of the wheel, is centrifugal force makes things get wider. So you're always fighting to keep it narrow, and that will be an ongoing battle. So I'm just gonna open this a little bit so that I have that 5 finger wide flat bottom that I want. Then I'm gonna come in here and flatten out the bottom, and other potters or teachers might call this compression, and it is indeed compressing the bottom, but my North Star here isn't like I'm trying to compress the clay. My North Star here is that I'm trying to make it flat so that it doesn't have an S-crack due to uneven drying characteristics. That's what I believe to be the primary function of the flat floor compression theory. So I've got that done. Now centering, opening, raising, shaping. I'm gonna be getting into my raise, and in my raise I have 3 raises to use. The first raise is to move clay. The second raise is to finish the top, and the third raise is to finish the bottom. As I'm making the bottom cylinder for this 2-part pot, I'm going to be doing a couple things different than if I was making a cylinder that was going to turn into a 1-part pot. One is that it's gonna be a little thicker, but two is that my primary concern with this is that it is even. I want an even cylinder because I'm gonna be turning this into something else. So these two pieces that I'm gonna stick together, the point of their life is that then they become one cylinder, which I then bow out into its own singular form. So for this raise, I'm gonna go knuckle to knuckle so just as a reminder, there's kind of three main styles of raising that I prescribe to, and from strongest to most dexterous, they are knuckle to knuckle, knuckle to finger, and finger to finger. And so finger to finger is like really dexterous, but it's a little bit less strong. Finger to knuckle is a nice, and I'm meaning finger on the inside, knuckle on the outside. That is a nice compromise between strength and dexterity. And then knuckle to knuckle is when you have a big honking 25-pound piece of clay and you need to get some clay up so that you can make your next move more efficiently. I'm always trying to move the most clay that I can. So knuckle to knuckle, I'll start at the bottom. I'm gonna start with my knuckle, drag my knuckle down there for a little bit and kind of get that groove going, and also fill up this little groove in my hand with some slip. And that is going to allow me to do this raise. I'm gonna get myself set up. I'm still gonna give myself a little bit more water down there. Don't hesitate to make sure I'm well lubed before I start cruising upwards. Notice my right arm is well planted on my right knee. And that's helping me stay really stable. And also notice how on my right hand, my knuckles almost kind of rolling over. I'm exaggerating now, but there's a motion to moving inside. And look at all that slip. So there's my knuckle here. There's all this slip in here. So you can see as I'm raising, all this is in there, just goo, and I'll never run out of slip. Once I get to a place where this is in my hand, I can raise and raise and raise and raise and raise and raise. And I'll never run out of slip ever because that's a self-licking envelope. Okay, now I am gonna just make a slight adjustment to the rim, but the other thing to notice is that this is tacking in. So before I get ready to do my connection, all my cylinders, I want them to be tacking in just a little bit. I don't want them to be going crazy because that's inconvenient, but if I'm raising a straight cylinder, I don't want it to be tacking out because that's how you start to get things out of control. So I want to be like perfectly vertical or slightly in. And that's what I'm going to do the conditions I'm going to do my raising under. So now I'm going to go to knuckle on the outside, finger on the inside, because I want some dexterity and power. And again, my purpose here is to finish the top. So I'll start off I'm using my thumb down here to just kind of create a groove, a starting place to start raising from. I'm using my knuckle on the outside and finger on the inside. And that is when I really kind of push to make sure that my top is going to be finished, but also evenness is crucial. So I'm trying to make this an even 1/2 inch really. And it's pretty close to that now. Now I'll come back and finish the bottom. That was my second raise. My third raise is to finish the bottom. And on this one, I'm gonna just go finger to finger because I wanna have a great feel for how thick things are. And as I finish the bottom, I'm gonna also kind of do a stabilizing raise all the way up to the rim. I'm not gonna make it thinner. I'm just gonna stabilize it and feel to make sure that it's even. Okay, now I'm feeling like it's about as thin as I want. And now the rest of this raise is just to make sure that there's no thick or thin spots. And I try to also make it so that if there is anything, it's a thick spot, not a thin spot. And as I raise up through it, I can just kind of address it. So now I've raised up this nice, quite centered very even trash can. Put that right in your bathroom. Put your little Kleenexes in there. And I'll come in. There's not really much requirement as to its exact size or shape. So, if there was, I could be thinking about that. Could somebody hand me a calipers somewhere? Thanks. So centering, opening, raising, shaping. The shaping on this is kind of weird and easy because it doesn't need very much shape. It's just going to be kind of what it is. So, thank you. Yeah. I'll come in with my rib to stabilize. I'm using it point down. Now, the other function of this is look at all that. That's like super wet, so this is a moisture management technique as well. So I'll come through, make sure that my throwing lines are all gone, make sure that any lines that are left from the tool have been taken away, because this is going to be the future of that all-important skin. So I want to make sure to have done a really good job. Now I got to get ready for my flange. My bottom cylinder is pretty much done. I am going to set myself up to attach another piece on the top of it. And in order to do that, I'll start with providing for a solid foundation that the next piece can sit on. And the beginning of that solid foundation is to cut the rim so that it's really even. It's like super flat. So this means that this is kind of a critical cut. And it means that I want to do a super good job on it. And so I'll just get some of this goo off so you can see my move a little bit easier. So if I'm going to do this cutoff and I want to have what I want to do is be on the right side at about a 30-degree angle right here. So, but what I don't want to do is have it like way out. I want this tool to be like held and executed by a machine. And to make myself more of a machine, what I'm going to do is kind of do a pencil grip, but I'm laying the tool across my middle finger and thumb. So I'm laying it across there, so it's got a pretty solid way of sitting. And then I'm wrapping my pointer finger around that. So now I have this like kind of quasi pencil grip, but it's like more of a like death fist. And so that I can hold this really solid and feel like when I come to cut this off, I can do it with a really solid hand. So I'll come through. Okay. And now that I have this really solid foundation, I'll come back in with my sponge and I'm going to prepare my rim for the next cylinder to connect to it. Actually, I set a drip down there, which I always get drips. I never let drips live on the inside and the outside. If I drip on accident, I go and get it right away, because that drip is going to make the whole thing wetter in that spot. We don't want that. So I'm wetting the rim using my pointer finger to split it. And the key to this is that the flange is split evenly on both sides of the wall. Common pitfall to have all the flange on the inside or all the flange on the outside. So then when you put the other piece on, what you want to do is have it so that the walls line up directly over each other, and the flange's job is to guide the next piece so that at the end of the day, the walls are perfectly lined up over each other. If the walls are misaligned, it's gonna slip. So we gotta make sure that those walls are lined up. So I'm creating a flange that is like that. I also notice that it's quite wide. You know, it comes out, beyond the walls of the pod, but it's quite wide and it's very round. And that very roundness on the inside of this flange is gonna be what prevents air and or slip from being caught in the union, which is gonna mess you up in various ways. You wanna have basically the kind of cleanest, driest union you can have when it comes to putting two equally wet bags of clay together, two equally wet pieces of clay together. You're gonna have no slip in there. You'll score on the next piece, you'll see that, but there'll be no slip in there. So now I'm going to take my calipers and I'm gonna measure, and this is like kind of a mental thing, and this is how I do it, I'm sure there's other ways, but I'm going to measure to where I need the rim, the outside of the rim of the next piece to land. So in the thinking that I want this piece to be the same width as this, like what I want is for it to be the same width as right here, just underneath the flange. So I could try to measure the cylinder underneath the flange, but I don't find that to be very useful. What I do like to do is measure on top and measure like a 1/4 inch inside the flange. So that now this measurement that I've created, which is just inside the edge here on both sides, means that the piece that I have will land perfectly over top of the walls of this piece here. So now I'm gonna move on to the other wheel. I'm gonna use this clay and I'm gonna make basically another one of these, except for with no bottom. And then we're gonna flip it over and stick them together.